Hello, my wonderful viewers, and welcome to another episode of Betty Adams Overanalyzes. Today, we're going to be taking a spoiler-free look at Kaiju number 8, chapter 77, which dropped an hour early on its release date, at least an hour early. I didn't come in till after it had dropped, and which does make me wonder, Kaiju number 8 took several months, many months, to figure out what its release schedule was going to be, but it almost always released on a Thursday, and 99% of the time it releases on a Thursday at, well, it's 8 a.m. where I am. I think it's midnight back at, come to think of it, this might be a daylight savings thing, why it's releasing an hour early, but earlier than I thought. But I don't know. Sometimes it releases an hour earlier than it usually does, but it usually releases at the set time, so that's perplexes me. But anyway, this was one of those chapters that blasted past, and when I went to count the pages after I was done reading, the story itself is only 19 pages long. So this one felt like a super fast chapter, felt like it only took 5 seconds to read, and it actually was a slightly shorter chapter. There's a reason for that, though. This was a setup chapter. We're getting to the main battle, but we're establishing so many things, and a lot happens in this chapter. So I'm going to start discussing the chapter, but first I want to say go check out my book, Humans Are Weird. 3 books in the series, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kobo by Rakuten, pretty much anywhere books are sold. Or if you want a good, solid tragedy, you can go check out Dying Embers, Dragons, Aliens, and Things That Go Boom in the Night, also available on Amazon. Kaiju number 8, chapter 77. This was, as I said before, a setup chapter. They're setting up for the big battle. And this chapter is just a really good illustration of how Matsumoto has chosen to write a story that stays solidly within the Shonen Jump archetype, playing solidly with and playing straight all of the Shonen Jump tropes. In this chapter, which is a much more internally focused chapter, the previous chapter, the one where Mina took out those kaiju from 15 miles away, was an external chapter. We're pulling back, we're literally seeing the landscape as a topographical map, as these massive railgun super weapons blast out miles in every direction. It was very much an external chapter, showing you externally what is going on with various members of the Defense Force. This is much more an internal chapter, showing you internally the emotional forces that are happening within the Defense Force. And it is this fantastic up-down beat of fulfilled and subverted expectations. So we start off with some basic setup, and then right off the bat, we get one of our expectations just destroyed. And this was actually an expectation that I'd barely even realized that I had about one of the kaiju, and it was just literally blasted out of the water. I'm like, well, and that gives me a serious feeling of shock and surprise, a very, very pleasant feeling of shock and surprise, because again, this story plays very straight with most of the shonen tropes. And so you really don't expect to be surprised as often as you are. Then we get a classic shonen trope revolving around the psychology of someone who is very powerful and knows they're very powerful and is maybe a little uppity about it. And we get a psychological beat that we have seen many, many, many times before. Probably not in every shonen, but probably in every other shonen. And it is played 100% straight. And then we get, again, this is what we'd call a tourney arc. There are no tourneys in this world. These are civil servants. They're just doing their jobs. But this is a Shonen Jump, and it's no spoiler to say that we're setting up for a series of one-on-one battles between our most powerful main protagonists and the most powerful antagonists. And in my mind, that's a tourney arc. And here, I think, is the genius of Matsumoto. I really, really, really don't like tourney arcs. For a manga that I really love, where I'm really invested in the characters, like, say, DBZ, I might actually read through the entirety of the tourney arc, but I'm just skimming it. Okay, who won what? All right, let's get on to the next chapters about character development. Let's see what the overarching plot is doing, because usually the tourney is just a means to the end. It's to show off some awesome fighting scenes, show off the character's power in ways you couldn't do so in a civilian population. And once the tourney arc isn't bad, but once you've read one tourney arc, you've kind of read them all. But Matsumoto has so expertly woven in so many elements of story and character development into the tourney arc that the tourney arc is not his own thing. You can't not read it. There's so many details in here. And again, that constant up-down of subverted and fulfilled expectations that makes it so you never really know what the next page is going to bring. And we actually do get something in this series, in this chapter, that has been mentioned, but we've never actually seen before in the series. And it's just very well done. So, those were my thoughts on chapter 77. There is that one, actually, I wouldn't call it a plot twist, because it really doesn't affect the plot all that much, but one fairly major corkscrew twist. Some tropes that are played 100% straight. Now, this is my biggest bit of advice to writers. Don't worry about being original. You have a trope that beat for beat was done in another manga. And, should I mention it? Yeah, there were plenty of tropes in that manga. Alright, what was the one with the Eves and the Atom and the two young protagonists? And which one was it? Where they had to go out and battle the monsters were called angels, and they had those fancy looking giant mecha suits. And the main female character was a deliberately genetically created to be like the perfect person. What crud? I know the title. Was it Eva? Anyway, it was the one that had that really bad ending that nobody was satisfied with. I don't even know if it was a manga before it was in an anime. Anyway, yeah, it was a manga, I think. Okay, I've rambled enough. I can't remember the name. So, anyway, there is an emotional beat. A major portion of the plot of this chapter was not taken from. It's just a solid trope, and both manga use the same trope. But anyway, it is very, very different in here, because the Matsumoto just focused on taking this trope and applying it as a tool in a way that made sense technically and artistically within the context of the story. And we get some flashback scenes in this trope, and the artwork is just on point. We get a few panels that are just rehashes of old panels that we've already seen, miniaturized, color, tone changed a bit, but then we get an art panel within this trope, and the art is just glorious. Oh man, that's a beautiful panel. The monster, the design, the character presentation, it's just very skillfully done, as is the presentation of the rest of the beats. So let's see how many pages this takes up. So I'd say it starts there with 1 page, 2 page, 3 page, 4 page, 5 page, 6 page. Okay, just over 6 pages in a manga that only had 19 pages this chapter. So let's see, 6 out of 19. That is nearly 2/3 of this entire chapter is devoted to a very, very old trope. And normally that would bog down the story, or you just skip over it, but I keep going back and rereading these panels because it's just so well done. My point being, Don't worry about being original. Just tell a good story. Pour your technical skill into the story. And it doesn't matter how old the trope is. It doesn't matter how often or how recently people have seen that trope. If you pour your technical skill, make sure it's well written. Make sure it's well directed. Make sure the characters are behaving in character. There is absolutely nothing surprising about this story beat, but it's so good. Okay. Again, C.S. Lewis, don't worry about being original, worry about being technically good, and the originality will come. All right, Kaiju number 8, chapter 77. That was my spoiler-free version. I will be giving you a full spoiler version on Sunday, as usual. Hit that like and subscribe button. Go check out my book, Humans Are Weird, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold, or my book, Dying Embers, where I am currently running the second round of edits on the prequel to that book, and so I'll see when I can get that out. Hit that like and subscribe button, and peace out, my wonderful viewers.